Welcome back to the Angry Man Podcast with Jason and Greg. As we have known for quite some time in the sport of boxing, all it takes is one punch to change the outcome of a fight. And certainly that happened last night with Tszyu losing to Bakhram Murtazaliev in devastating fashion. Now, I know that there's going to be a lot of people that are out there that are claiming that Tszyu is overhyped, overrated, so forth and so on, but I reject those deposits, as Tupac used to say, because at the end of the day, as I mentioned just a few seconds ago, one punch changes a fight in the sport of boxing. It's happened to the best of them, and we've seen it happen throughout the years. Tszyu has been somebody who has been more than willing to fight the best in his division, and we need to make sure that we don't criticize fighters for stepping up and fighting the best in their division, because what will happen is they'll become hesitant, and we'll have a bunch of undefeated fighters, but we're not seeing the best fights in the sport that we want to see. So let's make sure that we don't become overly critical of Tszyu. I appreciate everything that he's done. He had grown on me, honestly, from a 154 perspective. And, you know, I feel bad for him because I know that was a tough loss for him, but I'm pretty sure that he will bounce back. Now, I do not agree with the individuals that were hosting the fight last night in terms of Tszyu having to take about, 2 years to get back into the limelight. I think it's going to take him some time. Don't get me wrong. It's going to take him a little bit of time to get back to the pinnacle of sport, or at least the pinnacle of 154 pounds. But I don't believe 2 years is the length that it's going to take in order for him to get back to that point. So kudos to Tszyu. Now, Tszyu kept getting caught with the same left hook over and over and over again. And we've seen that in the past as well. We've seen a fighter continuously get caught with the left hook because they were not prepared for that particular punch. Maybe Murtazaliev is also on our stream, but I digress. Anyway, Tim just could not deal with that left hook and ultimately got put out of the fight in the second round. It was pretty much, I think it was the second round, right? Pretty much over in the second round. He got dropped like 4 or 5 times. So, yeah, he just needs to come back and refocus on camp and figure out what it is he's going to do. Now, we had a number of fighters that reacted to this last night, particularly Errol Spence and Terence Crawford reacted to it. Terence Crawford with several posts last night in regards to, Tim getting hurt, Tim taking the opponent lightly, and also making a comment about the fans, stating that the fans don't really know anything about boxing, and just because a fan has not heard of a particular boxer doesn't mean that the boxer is not good. Now, in reality, he was trying to defend his own resume with that statement. But in my case, I don't believe that the fans really have anything to do with it. At the end of the day, clearly Tszyu did not do his homework, and that was the person that mattered. The fans don't matter, right? If Tim had done his homework appropriately, according to Terence Crawford, because he said that Tszyu took the guy lightly, then maybe this is a guy that Tszyu can handle easily. I don't know. But regardless, the fans have nothing to do with this. It's a comment that doesn't make sense to me. Tszyu needs to do his homework. Errol Spence chimed in as well and said that, you never take anyone lightly, and that's true. You can't take anyone lightly in the sport of boxing because ultimately it just takes one punch. Now, what happens with Errol, Crawford, so forth and so on? Because for me, there were a number of big fights that could have occurred with a Tszyu win. We know that Tszyu was in negotiations with Terence Crawford to potentially fight him after he fought Erickson Lubin either late this year or early in 2025. That no longer is on the table because Terence is going to be interested in winning the title. So will Crawford move forward? I mean, that's an interesting question for me because, I did a video probably about, maybe a few days ago, 4 or 5 days ago, in regards to Terence Crawford and why I thought what he was doing was a brilliant move in regards to the Sebastian Fundora situation. Because it was going to set him up to become WBO champion, so he'd be unified WBO, WBA with the opportunity to win the IBF from Tszyu, and then one more fight, possibly with a Errol Spence if Errol were to win. Bakhram is not going to be a fight that's going to be very entertaining, at least from my perspective, from the Saudi perspective, right? meaning, Saudi Arabia is now saying that Riyadh season must be over in Saudi Arabia, so they're no longer going to fund fights that are not in that area. And if that's the situation, you got to think about what Terence Crawford is going to be wanting from a payday perspective. And I don't think he's going to get that with anybody other than Riyadh. And I just don't know if that's going to be an appealing fight for them. So that's number one. And then, with the whole Canelo situation, maybe Bud just decides that he's going to hang him up. At the end of the day, Terence Crawford has done well for himself. He's done well to manage his money, according to most people, and I believe that as well, because Terence Crawford just strikes me as someone who does things the correct way in regards to his money. But maybe he just calls it a day. There's nothing really else to prove. 2 times undisputed, 2 different weight classes, nothing else to prove. So he might just ride off into the sunset. Errol Spence has a fight with Sebastian Fundora, supposedly, coming up. Maybe Errol just decides that, after Fundora, maybe he doesn't have any further desire to unify the title. Maybe he just wanted to win a title at 154. I don't know what's going on with Errol and what his true desires are. And so that's going to dictate, of course, what it is that he does. But, ultimately, I think there's potential for Errol to say, maybe it's a wrap for me as well. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how things play out. We still have Mel at 154 pounds. I think he is the champion in resets for the WBA and the WBC. I don't believe he is for the IBF. Will be interesting for Mel to go and win that 154-pound IBF title. I think that would create some interest in some additional fights between he and Errol Spence or Terence Crawford. But yeah, this certainly damages a lot of big-time fights that could have occurred at 154. Crawford versus Tszyu. Tszyu versus Errol Spence. Crawford versus Fundora. Potentially, if these guys decide that the 154 pounds is no longer as interesting as it once was. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Again, Tim Tszyu, my hat's off to Tim Tszyu. I think he's a tremendous fighter. He got caught with a punch that he never really did recover from. He continued to get caught with that same punch. And ultimately, that was his demise. And anything can happen in the sport of boxing. And that's why we make these fights. We want to see these fights occur. We don't want fans to say, oh, well, he'll beat him. Or we already know what's going to happen with that fight. No, they need to get in the ring. We need to see what actually happens, because what's on paper doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to happen once those two gentlemen get in the ring. So we'll see what ends up happening. You guys tell me what you think in the comment section in regards to this. Did this significantly impact the 154-pound division in terms of Terence Crawford, Errol Spence? Do we expect to see Tim Tszyu back here in the next 6 months, a year? And will it take him 2 years to get back to the pinnacle of 154 pounds? Personally, I don't think so, but we'll see. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to hate, like, comment, and subscribe. This is the Angry Man Podcast, AM Sports Media, and I am out.